when you end your word, some strokes linger. Now that lingering part of it, that long extension talks about how connected you are to your roots, to where you come from, to people from your past and memory and childhood till date.
Right.
If someone knows you very well, they would know that the emotional side and the connection with your roots is fundamentally how you would define yourself.
Is there any formula behind success or high achievement? Can we really decode and imbibe skills, habits, or even personality traits of high-performing individuals? How do we accept ourselves for who we are and still continue to grow? Welcome to Absolutely Right, the first graphology-based podcast show in India. I'm your host Aditi Surana. I am a graphologist and a high-performance coach. And I must confess that I have been on a quest to find answers to all these questions I just mentioned. Most high performers that I have studied so far show a few common traits. Their ability to question the norms, external as well as internal, tops the charts. I know external questioning is obvious as they are these leaders, path breakers, revolutionaries. But the key to growth comes from internal cross-examination, where they can look at their own perspectives, beliefs, habits, or even other personal norms and evaluate them and change them. In today's episode, I will be analyzing our guest Rajiv Bakshi's handwriting. Rajiv is the CEO of Reliance Big Synergy, one of India's oldest content development and production companies. Earlier in his career, he worked with Discovery Network for 13 years as a head of products and marketing and was credited for building its 11-channel portfolio, 10-year leadership for Discovery Channel, and pioneering lifestyle category with TLC. In today's conversation, we will discover Rajiv's ability to question the norms in action. This one point we will be talking about and exploring from multiple perspectives. As you listen to this episode, remember to listen to our 2 new segments. Autograph Please, where I talk about how Rajiv is misunderstood by people around him by looking at his signature that depicts your public image. And Graphology Tool of the Week, where I take the signature-related conversation to the next level by talking about no mask, no entry. As we are approaching our 100th episode, we will be doing a 5-week series on signatures, as many listeners have repetitively asked me about signatures, their public image, their significance, and a lot more around it. Rajiv will join us on the other side of this short break. Stay tuned. Hi, Rajiv.
Hi, Aditi. How are you doing?
Very well. Happy New Year to you.
A very happy New Year to you as well and your team.
Thank you. So we are here talking about your handwriting, and this is the first time you're hearing about graphology, is it?
It's the first time I'm having someone take notice in my handwriting after my class 5 teachers. So yes.
Okay. So did you hear a lot about your writing from your teachers? Because it
They
looks
gave up
more
my classmate.
illegible.
They gave up on me, and then
I can imagine.
Thank God for Bill Gates and Microsoft to create something called Microsoft Word. Otherwise, I would have been struggling.
So out of curiosity, after how many years are you actually writing a paragraph on a paper?
I have 2 young children, and of course I teach, so I do write because of them. But yes, you're right. If I was not writing for my kids, writing 2 pages is difficult.
I can imagine and I can see.
You see, the issue with my approach to writing is I like to finish things fast. And now there was a time when I could write fast and think slower. Now it's reverse. I'm thinking faster and I can't write as fast. So I think it's gone worse now. It used to be slightly better than this, but It's gone to another zone now, I think.
So you can become a doctor now, finally.
At least a chemist.
So let's look at the part that you're talking about in your writing is illegible because of the speed. And many times this happens, and I've seen this with CEOs and leaders, because they have so much to think and so much to catch up on. Every minute, every moment, they are preoccupied with multiple things in their minds. And thereby paying attention to details, paying attention to every small process becomes difficult. Now, writing, which becomes illegible because of the speed, which also becomes like this thread-like writing sample, talks exactly about that. So one of the things that I look at your writing and stands out is, as a person, though you are in this public, field and you connect with so many people would be surprised to know that as a person, if given a choice, you'd prefer to be by yourself. And I would say very, very selective with friends and people you surround yourself with, we may
Yeah.
call you a loner to that extent, that you would prefer being by yourself to that
I
degree.
used to tell a few people and perhaps a few girls that I'm an introvert, and they thought perhaps I'm trying to kind of position myself or trying to impress them. But honestly believe I'm a kind of an introvert. When it comes to work, obviously duty calls, and then you become something else. But
Sure.
if there is no kind of reason to speak, I will take a 18-hour flight and not speak to people sitting on my left and right quite
Yeah,
easily.
and I think that's completely true. And we keep talking about it. You are an introvert who has learned how to, or rather mastered how to speak and communicate and reach out to people. But introverts really gain energy by spending time by themselves, doing activity where they can engage and really go slow, connect with themselves, and spend time pondering on smaller things. Now, it's like what I'm just saying.
Aditi, I also come from the school of thought that don't disrupt silence if you have nothing good to add, and I try to kind of maintain that. I mean, if there's nothing that you can add or there's no reason to speak, I rather not.
Very few people actually understand what you just said is so profound and so powerful.
Yes, but that's sometimes taken as by some people as perhaps arrogance
I
or
was
I'm being
about to say,
choosy.
and I don't think it's about introvert. If I look at your signature, and I'm going to come to that conversation when we talk about our next segment called Autograph Please. But when I look at your signature, which is about your public image, you are understood or misunderstood as an arrogant person because you do not do things to please people or make them comfortable. You are to the point and you really pick up the points the way you would like to present them. You look at the gaps, you look at how people are missing the details, and you talk about it. Now, when people feel confronted, they feel uncomfortable about it, and they feel you're probably trying to do it or you're thinking something that you're not communicating. All these things are scary because most people are not used to it.
See, signature, as we call the autograph today, signature is something I think picked when I was in class ninth. My dad asked me to open a bank account. I was reluctant. I felt no reason to open a bank account. He insisted, he won. And I then scribbled something which was largely my name.
Sure.
And it so happens everything else has changed over the life, but my signatures haven't really evolved. It's basically what I did maybe 20 years back. You could say it's gone a few curves or a few bounces, or maybe a little longer. But by and large,
Or
I would say the form is still the same.
I would say form generally, yes, and that is understandable. But there are many micro changes that I can see through your signature. So, for example, the speed at which you write, think, and also the illegibility, the detailing has changed. And I do not know your previous signature, but I can look at this one and I can say this cannot be a signature of a 14-year-old person.
Well, people try to create mystery around themselves. Perhaps this is my attempt to create a little mystery around me by giving my signature. This is the little mystery that I can possibly create. I mean,
Yeah,
if I
you're
would
saying
have kind
the
of
signature is really legible, and the mystery that you're creating is by being who you are in public without like having multiple faces to show and hide a lot of information. So, Rajiv, what questions do you have for me?
see, I don't know whether you can. I mean, of course, I will list a question for anybody who asks me this question because very few people give me a chance to ask questions.
Over to
Usually,
you. Go ahead.
usually they expect me to answer.
Right.
Uh, so, tell me from my how I write, or from the way you've seen my process of writing, and the words which come out and how they kind of shape together to form a sentence, long, short, and my colons and semicolons. What field should I have been? I'm in the right profession.
Isn't it
I
too
mean,
late
20
to ask
years,
that question?
but I think it's an opportunity I got to last now, 20 years hence.
Do we have any options? Did you dream of any other career than this?
I thought I would be a lawyer, forever. And that's a profession really was my first chosen profession. And I actually
Okay.
took admission and I went to a law school. And it's only after the first couple of, I think, lectures I felt I like the law, but this process is something I can't kind of savor.
So
So I
you
left it.
definitely require something which is faster, which moves with time, which evolves constantly. So you do not like to repeat a project or a process over and over again. You like to question it, question the norms, if I may say. And as you move into a situation, you like to reinvent the parts which are not moving. Now, any profession that allows you to do that, you would thrive there. Also, you want to work with people who are better than you in some or the other respect, and that matters a lot. So if you think that you're surrounded by people who are not adding value to you, you get restless. And if you
Absolutely.
think that you're constantly being questioned and you're limited by your own knowledge, you love those spaces. These are the things people feel uncomfortable about. But in your case, you really thrive when you are questioned, challenged, or even when you fail. It's very interesting to look at it, but you thrive in your failures. Like anytime you feel that. Do you play any sport?
Well, I used to play cricket, tennis, golf now. That's the only thing left. Eventually when you become, I don't want to call it a loner, but certainly a little more qualified introvert, golf is the only thing which remains. That's the only
Sure.
thing perhaps you can do alone.
So if you
So,
look at that as a skill, you thrive when you get something wrong, when you want to perfect it, you want to become excellent at it. And that pursuit, which is completely internal, nobody is watching, nobody is clapping, but that pursuit is something that you define your life with, you define your journeys with. So I
well,
feel that
you're quite right there. I mean, in the sense, I certainly admire people who have more knowledge than me, and one because that improves me, and it also gives me inspiration. And honestly, I strive for inspiration every day. And to your first comment about wanting to do something different every day, I think I'd like to say, and I've been fortunate. I say that I never had a dull day in my work. Uh, every day has been different for me for the last 20 years. I never repeated a day.
wow.
So much so I don't know what I'm going
Congratulations
to do
on
tomorrow.
that. That's amazing.
Yeah,
Very few
so
people get to do that.
either I enjoy too much of what I do, or I don't know which one it is, but I never had a dull day. Barring a few exceptions, I never had a dull day. And I quite kind of creating on a plain paper. I mean, if you give me a plain paper, I will cover it in a few hours.
So the kind of career related question that you ask, you require something which is logical, creative, spontaneous, and ever evolving. And if I may say, the profession that you have chosen actually allows you to do all of it, and that's why you keep reinventing yourself every other day.
Absolutely. Life is full of accidents, and some accidents are great and happening and happy, and some perhaps are not. But I think I've had some happy accidents. And so,
I
yeah,
think that's
I feel
amazing.
fortunate. I feel fortunate.
Next question.
I want to understand, how do people pick me as an emotional person or not? I mean, not about who I am. I know who I am. I want to understand from where I write. Is that how my demeanor and appearance, etc., would also be? My writing would
So
replicate
Rajiv,
my
I'm gonna
verbal words.
I'm going to step in and talk about your emotions and describe how you process information there. Now, it is very difficult for others to understand how you may react to a situation. And that unpredictability is not about you're trying to make a point. It is because you're evolving at that speed. So if somebody tries to put you in a box, oh, he is emotional like this, he'll behave like that. This is how, you can expect him to treat me. That doesn't happen. You question yourself, you break out of your own molds, and you do the same with the others. And that is a challenge. People mostly struggle to run and keep up with your pace, functionally and emotionally. Now, I'll tell this little bit further, okay? Rarely people would know that you're highly intuitive. So most of your emotional choices and processing mechanism is based on how you perceive things, which is beyond the logical understanding. So they stand there in an emotional argument and give you all the logic possible. And they're trying to convince you, and they're trying to, build a picture, but you're not operating from logic, which people do not understand. You're actually perceiving the overall situation and seeing what is possible and what is not possible, and you're kind of fighting the battle from that perception. Now I'm saying this because you do write partially disconnected. And anybody with disconnected writing has the gift of being intuitive and also disorganized. So with your emotions also, when you try to explain, there is lack of linearity. What happened 1 year ago or 2 years ago won't happen again, and you are in this moment, fresh, new, trying to figure out this conversation with a new pair of eyes, which people do not understand, and that creates the biggest struggle or misunderstanding when it comes to the emotional spaces with people.
And you suggest to people, I mean, including myself, signatures should be crafted with some intent, or they should come as they do?
So it depends on the objective. So when we craft a signature, we craft your public image. We literally pick the aspects that you would like to showcase to the world. And through Graphology, you know how we do logo designing for a company or a brand. Right. You think about the aspects you want the customers, the employees, and even the management to pursue. So the whatever vision that you have, you literally pick those aspects and you try to create a symbol out of it. I look at signatures as personal logos. I feel they're so important because literally when you're not there, your signature is your symbol for the other people or the world. But more importantly, it's a symbol for you in your mind. So if we can create a code that you can reinforce every time you sign, we are programming and reprogramming you for the paths that you choose. And that's why crafting signature is a way of therapy. It has to be done after understanding who you are, how you think, what are your objectives, and then you craft a signature. I was talking to some teachers today morning, and while having this conversation, we spoke about the same point. And they said, when kids write initially, so many graphological aspects are applicable, even they do not know how to write. But the very moment you put a pen to paper, suddenly the mind and body coordination takes over and your mind gives away information that one can capture. So we are talking about that information here.
Tell me and help me understand. My writing suggests that I'm reckless, careless, carefree. What is the impression you get when you read my one paragraph?
So you are carefree for sure, but you're also, I can't say disciplined, but you're very systematic in your mind. So whatever preferences you have or whatever internal systems that you have created, they must be followed to the T. So that carefree behavior also has, like there's a order in this chaos, which people cannot see, but there is an order. You can recreate.
What gives that away in my writing? How did you pick that from the writing?
Two aspects. When somebody writes a letter F, which is a complete formation. So when you write your F, it is like, it has a top loop and the bottom loop, and it's a complete formation. That shows impeccable planning and execution. So when you sit to plan something, it will go to the T and nobody can really mess with that plan, and you'll make sure it is executed. But when you would be creative, you'll come up with completely out of the world ideas that other people are not ready to deal with. They do not know how to execute it. But you would stand there and you would create those ideas. And I'm saying that because in writing, we have something called upper zone. So, you have loops in your letter L and your Ds. So all the loops that you have are well formed, talking about the actual creative conception of ideas. So if I have to combine these two, I would say, yes, there is recklessness in your behavior. Also, you're a disconnected writer. So you have so many ideas coming in intuitively. But when it comes to planning and execution, it is done precisely. Now, that is very confusing for people because they try to put you into the box of somebody who's like overtly creative, and then they see your planning and execution, but that looks somebody who's really precise. So they get confused. And that's why I said the biggest challenge for others to deal with you is to cope up with the evolution process that you go through.
And this is whether they've seen my handwriting or not, they will judge me exactly how you're saying. You're saying this is my personality, is demeanor.
Perfectly.
Writing is only giving it away to you, but others will, of course, notice it by behaviors in the room.
Yes.
And experience.
Yes.
Is there an ideal writing? Is there an ideal writing format, or is it too deceptive to do that?
So, Rajiv, is there ideal personality ever?
Well, I keep hearing there could be. They keep telling me I'm not. So yeah.
Probably for you, other people are deciding what is ideal, but for in general, right? There is no way we can create a formula of how all of us should be, because the beauty is in the diversity that we bring to the table. And the fact that you get to be the full, complete version of yourself is where the poetry of personality and life is. You
Well,
cannot.
Aditi, I envied people, including my wife, who's such a fluent handwriting. My sister has such a fluent handwriting. I can see, and I admire the fluency in the handwriting. In fact, when we have to fill forms for my daughters, I will ask her to fill it, especially with the handwritten. There's no point me filling it; they'll get the name wrong or something else wrong. Not that I don't make an attempt. I make a serious attempt to write it very carefully. I mean, I have to write this check twice. And when I write my
Okay.
check, I have to sign twice in the back, twice in the front, so that it doesn't give me a headache later.
Sure.
And I do it for them. Not, I don't know, but I'm trying to be nicer to the other people so that at least they get it. And it's an effort, and I completely it goes unrecognized. And I'm telling you, I
Sure.
get
I,
zero
I
acknowledgement.
feel sorry for you, Rajiv.
I mean, I hope somebody does because I really do it for their peace of mind and comfort that they can process the check or process the form.
Sure.
Uh, but some people have such fluency in their handwriting, and I also believe I have fluency, except doesn't show in the writing. I mean, I write very fluently. I don't stop. It's a
True.
continuous draft. I don't
True.
pause. I seldom pause. How do people see that? I mean, is fluency a great sign of something? And in my case, it doesn't appear as I'm being fluent.
So,
It's
fluency
disorganized.
in
I think you
writing.
use the word.
Sorry, you got to repeat that line. I
It
couldn't
seems
hear
more
you.
disorganized in your words. If somebody sees my handwriting, it seems broken, disorganized.
So we call it connection formation. In writing, there are multiple ways in which one letter could be connected to the other. When people connect it in a more flourishing manner, like literally having connections which are well defined, and mostly they are like garlands, literally there's a U formation. From one letter to another, you have this U formation. Now, most convent kids have that formation. They were forced to write like that, and that
Right.
is about being socially more acceptable. That connection, what you're talking about, that fluency in connection talks about you want to be part of a group or a team. You work as a collective unit, and people are more adjusting and tolerant to other people's behavior. Now, all that I said is not applicable to you. And thereby, your writing does not show any of it, because your strength lies in questioning and in becoming the person who would make everybody in the room uncomfortable by saying things that they require to hear.
Let's talk about two particular people who would generally be extra nice to you all your life, your father and mother. They would generally be generous to you. When they would look at this handwriting, and I've never dared to ask them, how would they be perceiving me? Not because of the handwriting. I just want to understand how do they perceive me? Same as the word
Rajiv,
would, same as the wife.
I was about to say, I don't think for your parents they needed handwriting. They just knew you really, really well. Now, I must say that you're very close to both your parents, and you're very, very adjusting as a son. So when it comes to prioritizing how they function and what they require, though you're stubborn in places and you're forthright in your opinions, when it comes to their responsibility, you do change your priority. And that's very, very important for you. Like when you approach the situation, you do not jump to conclusions. And that patience, if I have to really, like, you're not even as patient as you with your kids as you are with your parents. It's really mesmerizing to see how the same person who would be impatient around the world, when it comes to your relationship with your parents, becomes really, really caring, responsible, and quiet. Like, you really become a better listener than ever.
Let's talk about the most important person in anybody's life today, especially in the corporate world, the boss.
Sure.
How would a boss over the period would have seen, my notes
You?
or writing?
Not
Uh,
notes. Let's talk about how the boss would deal with you, or how
yes.
difficult it is for your boss to cope up with
How,
you.
was I difficult for them, or am I kind of a pleasing ride for
Easy
them?
walk, like really, Rajiv.
Something you're delighted to have a subordinate like some people. So am I that?
You are that subordinate who would make sure that the boss cannot control, cannot give only instructions without giving explanation. You do not back off if you're not convinced, and if you're not convinced, it shows on your face. So you may keep quiet, but in your expression, everybody in the room would know that Rajiv is not convinced about what just happened here. So definitely, you're not an easy subordinate to work with. But definitely, I would also say, add here that people have come to respect you and see the value that your behavior adds. And that has kind of encouraged you to be more stubborn, I may say so.
With somebody like my handwriting, would the impression about me change every succeeding quarter? Because first 3 months, one person may think differently, another 3 months differently, another 1 year differently. Is that a successively a person's opinion about me changes?
No, that doesn't happen like that. In your
Okay.
case, you change with your internal journey. The changes are very drastic. They're not time bound. You don't set goals for say 2020, I'm going to work on these 5 things. That does not happen. But you definitely change over a period of time. But when you change, the change is very drastic. So if you believed in one philosophy and you like literally lived by that rule, for say 6 months and then you got convinced about something exactly contrary to that, you would change and you would jump in and you would experiment with the next thing and give your 100% when you're trying that. Now you would not sit there and question, oh my god, I did something else and what would people think about me? In the month of Jan I was saying something else. You won't. You would, in the month of June, because you believed in something new, you would switch, you would change, and that is very difficult for people to adjust with. But
I
that's who
see.
you are, and then
Right.
that's what you love to do.
And seeing who you've seen me quite kind of thorough from my handwriting. What is the advice you'll give me as a practice in the real world? What should I do? I'm not suggesting everybody should love me, but for people to kind of enjoy my company, let's put it like that, or like me or tolerate me, whichever one we want to take.
Okay, so I'm going to break this question in two parts. First, what advice I would give you in general, and then we'll talk about other people. I personally feel that you used to be more engaged with the activities that you did, and in last probably 3 years, you haven't felt that level of engagement with things that you are doing and projects you're working at. And that is something you got to relook at, because that cannot continue. You have to sit down and evaluate the projects that you are engaging yourself with, make the required shift or change. And I'm saying this specifically because I do not see you growing at the speed you would like to grow. So are you growing faster than others? Yeah. Is it uncomfortable for others? Yes. But are you growing at the speed you would like to? I think no.
How
And
did
this
you
is
pick
where,
3 years? You put a specific period of 3 years. Where did
because when
that
you
come from?
write because when you write the entire page, it divides your kind of, the timeline of your life on the page. And I've gone through more than 16,000 handwriting samples, so you kind of start getting the timeline even more precisely when you look at the sample. So it's, I think, very mathematical more than anything else. So
Yeah.
when I speak about that, so that learning curve is something where you have to pay attention, because that can become completely frustrating if all of us do not grow and feel intensely involved in activities that matter to us. We start getting frustrated and stressful. So that's point number one. The second point of how people can deal with you better, I feel you have to break things for them to understand. So you think you do that, but let me break it for you. You do not. Like, they feel that you really move way faster than they can cope up with. So the way you do it for your parents, especially, or for your students who are like 9-year-old, third standard
Right.
kids, how you break that
Right.
it up. You probably have to do that for other adults too, without getting impatient or judgmental. Because if you get judgmental about why they don't get it, you might not roll your eyes physically, but you do that mentally, and it is very evident on your face. So you can't hide those
Right.
expressions easily.
And can you also take out anger, happiness in writing? Can you pick those things
Yes.
as well when you see someone writing?
Yeah. Like in your case,
Enthusiasm as well?
yes, I think to answer all those questions, enthusiasm, your writing moves to the upward side. When you write on a blank sheet of paper, the writing moves up. And that talks about the immense amount of enthusiasm that you bring to each project. If I have to talk about your anger is residual anger. So you hold on to something and you try to process it. You don't try to react on it. You may snap, but you just quickly hold your comment back and you want to process it. But if it is not processed, which happens to many conversations, it builds the I would say, ammunition. And when you really take an action, you don't necessarily sit and talk with people, you take an action. So you finally reach a point where you take a call, whether you want to do it or not, if you want to walk away from things. So when you take that call, you have all that ammunition which is unresolved, and all those residual moments kind of come together for you to feel uncomfortable about things. So their communication and probably giving people a chance to explain themselves will really, really help, I would say. Those are the
Interesting.
moments where you feel angry.
And what does this writing give you in terms of any insight in the future, near future, far future?
I
Does
cannot
it give any,
predict.
does it give any
Nothing.
insight? Does it give, no,
No,
not about my future.
it can talk about the tendencies that you
That's what
behave
I'm
with.
saying. I'm saying,
So if
can
you
you
give a
notice anything that is
situation,
shifted? Any things which are shifted over the period?
which I said, like 3 years specifically, I've thought that your engagement has reduced. That's one thing. The enthusiasm still covers up for the lack of engagement, so other people can't see it, but only internally you can see that, say, the boredom is setting in, or the frustration or the questioning whether I should do this or not. All of that is setting in now, more than ever before. So definitely that is a shift I see. So,
Interesting. Very
Rajiv,
interesting.
we have spoken already about the signature and how you're misunderstood and all those aspects. But let me hold one comment for our segment called Autograph, Please, where we actually look at the signature and talk about the gap between who you are and how you're perceived. Now, we have already covered many points in that context, but I want to add one little thing about how you're misunderstood. And please give us an example if that has happened to you. So, you're very
Yeah.
picky and we are very peculiar in the way you want things to be done. So if you want 3 o'clock something to be done, it has to be done at 3 o'clock, maximum 3:05, not more than that. And people generally feel threatened around you, and that's what your signature says. That people, like public image wise, when people look at you and they see all these preferences, it is really overwhelming for them. Do you have any example of people saying that to you?
I would use the word, I wouldn't even use the word peculiar, but I'm particular. I'm certainly particular if you said something to happen at 3 o'clock. See, I run TV channels. A program has
Right.
to start at 7 o'clock or 8 o'clock. It will start at 8 o'clock. I can't give an excuse to an audience saying, no, I'm sorry, delay by 5 minutes, 6 minutes. It doesn't happen in
Sure.
a real professional world. So I'm
Sure.
basically trained for that. So if I said 8, it's going to be 8. If I said 7 people will arrive, 7 will arrive. If I said food will be mild spicy, it's got to be mild spicy. It's just like that. So, I mean, it's simple communication. So, yes, I'm particular because I'm investing my time and my resources or my effort. If I'm investing any of this and I've communicated as such or I've been told as such, I see no reason why it shouldn't happen like that. And if
Sure.
it can't happen, all I want is an advanced intimation or perhaps an explanation later.
Sure.
I don't like people being casual about it to the extent that it starts affecting my performance or my enjoyment.
Sure.
So far, it doesn't affect my enjoyment and performance. I'm fine with it. But when it starts affecting my enjoyment or performance, certainly I have a kind of. I believe I have a role to kind of point out.
So
Uh,
has it happened that people really felt threatened, uncomfortable, nervous around you? And have you heard stories about it later?
Yes, I mean, yeah, not just later, maybe in real time as well, but yes, now people are more confident to speak in real time. And, it's not happened so easily. Of course, I've compromised over a period of time because my friends would make me stand up for 1 hour wait, 2 hours wait, 3 hours wait, half an hour wait. Not everybody
Sure.
is as punctual or regimented. People say that, I have more like the army background. Of course, a lot of people in my family are from kind of background of army and therefore they're disciplined, but it's largely comes from my mother. Because my mother is very disciplined. My father was never so disciplined. It didn't matter to him time, watch, clock, doesn't matter. He always wear a wristwatch. I don't think he followed it ever. My mother has never worn a watch, but she's always very particular about certain things. So I think it's this discipline has come to me from my mom, and it's it's ingrained in my body. I can't help it.
Sure.
So I time if I have to time somebody's travel, if I have to get petrol done on the way or eat somewhere or make a call, I can time it. And I'm quite sure the rest of the world can also do that same thing. But if they try to be casual, I see no reason. You see, when you go to theater, you want the movie to start on a certain time.
Right.
No, why can't you be with him I mean, you can't be double standards, right? When it comes to your convenience, you're fine with it. When it's not, so yes, but yes, in meetings, in reviews, when people say I want to come back to you in 2 days, I honestly believe they mean 2 days, which is 48 hours from the day they said, and I will count 48 hours from 3 o'clock. I don't know how
Sure.
they count, but I count for what they said. So if they said
I'm
2 days,
also laughing so much because, I spoke about the letter F when I was analyzing, and I said, there are two loops in the F on the right side, and that particular formation talks about how precise you are with your planning and your execution. And people around you who would not have that same F or that kind of planning and execution skill would always have these struggles with you, and you would have struggles with them. So, yes, I
yes,
hear your
and in the
perspective.
professional world, I don't know whether they're trying to deceive me or they're casual about it or it doesn't matter to them, but it should. And I just want to make sure that they understand that 48 hours from 3 o'clock will actually happen at 3 o'clock 2 days from now, and not. So it's a simple calculation of life. I mean, if you can't do that, there's a difficult. So I don't mind if somebody says 70 days, but then I would know
Sure.
70 days in my calendar, and I would
Yeah.
actually know that.
And you
But
send them a
yeah,
reminder that the 70 days are over.
and I would be kind to them to send a reminder because it's possible they may have taken it casually as world does sometimes. So I would tend to send them a reminder and they should not take that as being rude. I just try to tell them I'm not being rude or pretentious or presumptuous. I'm just telling you that 1 day is left. 69
Sure.
days are over. And it's my duty to tell you that. And I think I'm being a friend. I'm not being nosy. I'm just being a friend. But people
Sure.
sometimes don't get it.
I hear you loud and clear. Thank you so much for being on the show. I think this whole different perspective and really understanding the world from your angle, and that's what we love on the show. Actually bringing different people from different walks of life and seeing the world through their eyes. That is so
Right.
powerful because sometimes our listeners might not be able to understand the brother or the boss or the family member, and when you bring in your perspective, they can relate to the story and start understanding those people even better. So thank you so much for being so vulnerable and so open about all the questions that you asked. I had a great time.
My pleasure. Thank you for hosting me and having me on the show. Thank you.
Thank you.
I love this autograph please segment. Signatures are revealing and how. When I started my journey with graphology, I questioned everything that I came across. How can this simple handwriting stroke and signatures talk about innate, deep rooted behaviors? I don't want to represent anything that I can't support, okay? I said many things like that. I dismissed it, denied it, doubted it. But something about the accuracy of the subject kept me hooked. Sample after sample, I saw synergy in what I had read in my books and what I saw in the actual samples. So, as you and I have been on this journey of absolutely right long enough, let me take our conversation to the next level. Let's talk about signatures. Yes, that is the only part of handwriting we are left with. But signatures talk about your public image, how you're perceived, how people look at you as your first impression, how they understand and misunderstand you. So let me present Graphology Tool of the Week. No mask, no entry. I know we all are tired of listening to this sentence everywhere we go. But let's accept we do not have any privilege of getting tired of this message on stickers, posters, or even billboards. We understand what it means when it comes to corona and hygiene standards. But do we understand the same message when it comes to our social situations? Across all cultures around the world, when people interact in social situations, they're expected to wear a mask. Not a physical mask, but this fake projected persona, as Carl Jung calls it. We call it manners, tehzeeb, or even social norms. Let's accept our social media post may say things like, be yourself, others are taken. Those who do not like you for who you are not your friends to begin with. Or be who you are no matter what. However, the matter of fact is, as a society, we do not accept people if they are being themselves completely. We judge them for showing their real emotions and being vulnerable. We laugh at their choices if collectively, as a group, we do not approve of it. Unknowingly, we demand that each one of us must wear a mask that covers certain undesirable, sensitive, unpleasant aspects of people's life, a mask that helps you fit in this pre-decided structure of boxes so that other people can deal with you in a better manner. We all behave differently in public in comparison to how we behave at home. Understandable. We all have a work face, social face, or even a socially acceptable, polite smile face. Basically, there is a gap in who we are and who we project ourselves to be. Understandable because some degree of gap is healthy, as it allows you a breather, privacy, or even required personal space. But the problem is when these masks become misleading altogether, they turn into traps. I know I'm sounding a bit strong here, but I have seen people feeling lost under the burden of these masks. Wonderful people spending their lives only in fabricating this false image that can get them the approval required, living unhappy and anxious under the garb of a smiley filter, you may say. It breaks my heart to see how these wonderful conflicted people keep living in the question and doubt of their self worth. Graphologically speaking, your handwriting depicts who you are as a person in your personal and private life. And your signature talks about who you are when you project yourself in public. If there is a huge difference in size, shape, spacing, formation, pressure, baseline, connection, and other such aspects of your writing and signature, then you feel misunderstood by people around you pretty much all the time. In my graphology masterclass, we have a dedicated segment to these signatures as they're very, very important. They're the reason behind how valued you feel when you're with others. What kind of first impression do you make? And how some people cannot understand you no matter what you try. If you see a huge gap in your handwriting and signature, then ask yourself, why do I behave differently when I'm in front of others? You need not share this with anyone. It is between you and me. But be honest when it comes to noting these exact changes. Is it the tone of your voice that changes or your body language? Do you think your expressions are different? What do you do? Why do you feel the need to pretend to be someone else that you're not? Your motives, your understanding will actually help you see the gap clearly. Now, here is a trick. If you see this gap in your friends, bosses, spouses, even parents' handwriting, you will see how they behave differently in public and in their private personal life. Now, you might have seen them in both these scenarios, so you know the gap. Graphology will give you a specific tool to look at what exact variation this creates. Now, you might have seen this gap any which ways as you know them in their personal and public life, but graphology will give you a better insight into it. Please note, having this insight is very powerful. Please note that having this insight is very powerful. So, if you choose to talk to them about it, be kind and gentle. In our next episode on Friday, let's talk about how these gaps in your handwriting and your public image create conflicts in relationship. And why not? When people fall in love, they fall in love with their public images, which means signatures. And when they get married, they have to live with the actual personality, which is their handwriting. Now, this is very, very tough to do. Thank you so much for joining me today on this episode of Absolutely Right. Go ahead, look at someone's handwriting and see if you can find any way to help them by seeing the gap in their writing and the signature. If you like this podcast, then don't forget to check out other interesting podcasts on IVM Network. You can listen to us on IVM Podcast app or ivmpodcast.com. You can also follow us on our social media. We are at IVM Podcast on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Let's connect on Friday. Till then, happy writing!